My name is Bongwan Cho-Oh. I was born in Seoul, Korea, and came to the United States in the winter of 1956. I'm the oldest of seven. I sort of had been, during my childhood, as sort of like a second mother to all of them. And my mother relied on me despite the fact that she had couple of, babysitters and maids and cook and all that, At one time, we were a prosperous family. It didn't last too long. My father was a very distinguished judge and a lawyer. Because of his independent, outspoken ways, he was politically persecuted during the American military government period between 1945 and 48, and then after the establishment of Republic of Korea, President Seungman Rhee's regime didn't like any anti-government or critical comments from intellectuals, and he was just about one of the first so-called human rights lawyers in Korea. The Seungman Rhee regime, which later became rather authoritarian, as you know, they didn't need human rights lawyers. He suffered political persecution, therefore his practice did not prosper. It impacted me a lot during the colonial period. Our family never changed the surname. As you know, from 1937 on, there were draconian rules, two draconian rules. One was to change all Korean surnames into Japanese style, and the other was almost exclusive use of Japanese language outside home. And my father never changed the surname. The final year of World War II and the colonial era, I was basically the only one remaining in my class of about 40 without the Japanese-style surname. I was severely punished, and whenever I went home complaining that my father sat me down, told me about our family history, that helped me not to complain and kind of suffer through all the punishment through the end of the colonial era. It really deeply instilled in me Korean nationalism, that we exist as a separate entity from Japan, that Japan was unjustly occupying us, therefore considerable anti-Japanese feelings. It really was the beginning of intolerance for injustice, which I still have a lifelong core belief in me, that I cannot tolerate injustices with my naked eyes. Since he had been a judge, even for 3.5 years, he got a lot of cases that totally, without any kind of source of income. The nationalists imprisoned in Seodaemun prison. So he took on a lot of cases of unfairly imprisoned nationalist independent activists. So when 1945 came, our house became the first clearinghouse of this emaciated, lice-ridden prisoners. And we hosed them down, gave them first clean clothes to wear, contacted their relatives and sent them out. I clearly remember as I helped them hose down the lice on the bodies of these prisoners. That had an everlasting impact on me. I was 11 years old at the time. And many nights I cried over them because they looked so terrible. Deep sense of nationalism, unjust Japanese occupation of Korea. That was very impressionable, at an impressionable age. There was very little education going on in the aftermath of the Korean War, and we were basically automatons, going to school, I just couldn't tolerate that. So I wanted to have a better education as an undergrad. So I began doing research at U.S. Embassy Annex of USIA, and I discovered Seven Sisters College's counterpart of 7 Ivy League universities, which was not coeducational at the time. So I sat down and decided to write a query letter. And then I was thinking, who would pay any attention if you just send a query letter? Korea is so little known, and known only as a devastated, very poor country. So in the first packet, I included everything about me that an admissions counselor could not possibly say no or throw away in the trash can. So I waited for a good propitious time to break the news. And one summer evening, my father came home later than usual in a good mood. And on those nights, he would typically gather us all up, usually all 7 of us, and tell his story of coming from countryside to Seoul. At the end, I was the only one remaining. And on that particular night, he was saying especially to me, the importance of good education regardless of gender. Up to that point, he always said, you are a girl, but there is nothing you cannot do, a man can. So I seized that opportunity and broke the news. He respected my initiative and resourcefulness. And in a few days' time, he said, okay, if you want to go ahead. He named me a very male-sounding name, Bongwan. Bong is Phoenix, Wan is J-Ball. And I used to be kidded by my, young classmates. And I would ask him, and he says, lots of times names can interfere with what you do later in your life. I didn't want you to sound on the paper, like a typical woman. Actually, I didn't want to go to grad school because 3.5 years at Barnard was tough enough for me. While I was at Barnard, I met my future husband during my junior year, and he was at grad school at the same time working at the Office of Korean Mission to the UN. During that time, it was 1958, we had met earlier, about 6 months earlier, but then at an event in March, we became closer and we started dating. And in August, he gave me an engagement ring. So a year later, after I graduated from Barnard, we got married in Washington, D.C. When we got married, I thought, this is nice. I'm going to now be just a full-time housewife. So although I had already registered to pursue master's in history at Georgetown grad school, I said to my just a freshly married husband, I'm not going to go to school because I'm going to be a mother and I'll be a very good housewife. So, but he said, no, there is no way. You're going to go to school. And I put up all kinds of tantrums. He said, I'm not going to live on your parents' money, We have to live on my own. We use that for school. Your parents sent you here to study, and you stopped going to school because I married you. How am I going to meet your parents? So I relented and started going to school. And what I'm trying to say is if my husband did not insist on my pursuing grad studies, I would not have gone and not be where I am right now, actually, because I very much wanted to be a mother and housewife. So I said, where are we going? Well, you'll know when we get there. So we loaded up the kids, and then he was heading toward the Minneapolis University of Minnesota campus, and then parked the car in front of graduate school. So I said, who's going to grad school? You already finished. I said, you are. So I said, me? Mother of 3? Well, we'll just go see what's available. So I was standing there, he did all the talking. There was a receptionist and there was a division and there was an assistant dean sitting behind it. And after a while, this voice came from the behind. She said, your timing could not have been better. The announcement just came in earlier today that the Danforth Foundation in St. Louis has just announced graduate fellowship for women whose studies had been interrupted to continue graduate studies. So my husband said, "That's it for you. This is for you. This is what we've been looking for." I was thinking, oh no, here we go again. So I got one of the first 20, and that fellowship, very generous, and lasted 5 years. And that enabled me, first year at University of Minnesota, and I finished my Ph.D. at the University of Chicago in 8 years' time. So I got my degree in August of 1974. My oldest was 14 years old. There was an opening announcement at Loyola of Chicago. They were looking for remarkably Asian studies, assistant, tenure track, assistant professor level. And I applied for it, and the rumor had it that 70 people applied for one position. I got the job. I was known to be a very caring professor, and I volunteered to be a freshman advisor, and then I got tenured and promoted and on schedule. But the heartbreaking thing was 2 years after I was tenured and promoted, my husband got appointed to be the academic vice president of Catholic University in DC. So I was here presented with a dilemma of whether to stay or go with him as a dutiful Asian wife. As I was pondering about that, two contradictory ideas never left me. While at Loyola, I initiated a women's studies program along with two other women faculty. Three of us got together and started the first women's studies course ever, and that was wildly successful. So I had a coterie of feminist colleagues. When I even entertained the thought of going with my husband, they couldn't believe it. I was doing it. It was against feminist principle, they would say. But at the same time, what my mom just drilled in me said, husbands are small heaven, sochon. You have to serve your husband. I requested a leave of absence from Loyola without pay. So I went with him, got us a house and decorated and even entertained. After leaving Loyola and 3 years administrative experience at a remote small college, I had some kind of internal enlightenment, you might say. I became an academic activist. While I was sitting as an assistant dean, students that I did not expect would come and see me. They were mostly Korean Americans. What I discovered was that these Korean American students weren't getting academic advising they needed. They are the minority totally overlooked. That really kind of, my gosh, sent me a little electric shock to me. I have to do something about it. Smart sons would go to elite private schools, including Ivy Leagues and like Stanford, Northwestern University of Chicago, and things like that. But they would not send them to Maryland. Maryland is considered at best a second tier in a state university. So most of the Korean American students at Maryland were women students. Feminist inspiration. Okay, we gotta do something with these women students. And then another thing was there was no Asian American course. I went around big department chairs' offices and dean's offices. It's a huge campus. Beg for money. We have this many Asian American student population than a single Asian American course. I want to have a pilot project of having at least somebody teach adjunct one course and see what happens. So I collected a total of 3,000. which, believe it or not, was the adjunct pay, one course adjunct pay. So I had that money. I knew somebody who wanted to teach even the jobless Ph.D. lingering around this area, so had him hired adjunct. My career had been obviously checkered because of the fact that I'm a mother of 3 kids and moved because of my husband's job. I realized while I was raising children and moving with my husband, my core values was basically a woman's, mother's, and wifely values. I was asking my question, where would I be if my husband does not succeed and if his health fails because I'm not with him, or he gives up early because I'm not with him? I would feel a failure myself rather than my being successful alone. And also, while I was raising kids, do I attend to children's need or read one more chapter or write 2 more pages? I remember consciously taking the first alternative. Go with kids and raise them properly, because if their success will be my success. If they fail, I would feel like a failure. Those 2 core values were well taken, and I'm glad I took those values very seriously. I'm gonna be 85 next month, and I'm doing what I can and continue to live values. I'm extremely grateful how my life turned out to be in this country, and grateful for people around me and for American society for giving us these opportunities, and that enabled my family to live to the fullest. My name is Bonnie Bongwan Cho-Oh. This is my Korean American story.